students, in the previous class we have seen the areas of applications of biotechnology, and then we have seen some of the ways to enhance food production, and among that how the traditional ways of enhancing the food production such as agrochemical based agriculture or organic agriculture, how they are having drawbacks when compared with the genetically engineered crop based agriculture. So we are going to see certain applications in biotechnology, that especially in agriculture as well as in other fields also we are going to see, right? So one important application of biotechnology is it helps in the production of genetically modified organisms known as GMOs. Now the GMOs can be plants or they can be animals also. Another name for genetically modified organisms is transgenic organisms. If it is a plant, then it is known as transgenic plants. If it is an animal, then it is known as transgenic animals. Now what are these genetically modified organisms? Any organism whose genetic composition is altered or it is manipulated, right? How it is manipulated? Using genetic engineering techniques to produce the desired product, then it is known as genetically modified organism. So the genetically modified organisms can be defined as those organisms such as plants, bacteria, fungi and animals whose genes have been altered or modified by manipulation using genetic engineering methods are called as GMOs or genetically modified organisms, right? For example, as I have given the example of insulin. Insulin is produced in the bacteria, right? The large scale production of insulin takes place in the bacteria E. coli. Now, E. coli is a genetically modified organism. In its origin, by its nature, it doesn't possess the gene coding for insulin. But using genetic engineering techniques, the gene coding for insulin is inserted in the E. coli bacteria. Therefore, it is a genetically modified organism. Now, how these genetically modified organisms help? They help in agriculture, they help in medical field, they help in other production of the biologicals and therapeutics because it has been altered to produce the desired product. So what are the advantages of techniques used in GMOs? What are the advantages? Why we require GMOs, or how these GMOs are being prepared? Now the advantages of techniques used in GMOs. For example, in GMOs, the gene can be taken from any organism and introduced into any organism. The specific handling of the genes is possible, right? So therefore, the gene, it can be isolated from the smallest microbe and it can be inserted into the complex animal. It can be taken from the E. coli and inserted into the cattle, pig or any other animal, or it can be taken from the microorganism and it can be inserted into the plant. So this is advantage of techniques used in GMOs. Gene can be taken from any organism and introduced into the host organism, or the gene can be synthesized chemically. Whatever the required sequence of the DNA, if it is known, then using the genetic engineering techniques, this gene can be synthesized chemically, that is artificially in vitro, and it can be introduced into the host organism to perform the function, right? So that is one of the advantage of the techniques used in genetically modified organism. The gene can be taken from any organism and can be inserted into another organism. The change in genotype can be precisely controlled as transgene is introduced. Means the change in genotype. The E. coli will have its own genetic composition whenever its genetic composition is altered by inserting the foreign gene in it. then whatever the product it is going to produce, it can be altered, but thing is it can be controlled. Using the gene regulation system, it is possible to control the gene expression. Means the whatever the foreign gene you have inserted in it, it should not affect the activity of the other genes. It should not suppress the expression of the other genes. So all such things is controlled using genetic engineering techniques. So therefore, it is not an issue to insert the foreign gene in the organism. The organism will accept the foreign gene because the changes whatever is taking place in the genotype can be controlled. So these are the advantages of techniques used in GMOs. What are the techniques? Now we will see the advantages of using GM plants, GM crops or GM plants. So the plants that are used in agriculture whose genetic composition is being altered, they are known as GM crops or they are known as GM plants, genetically modified crops or genetically modified plants. So let us see the advantages of using GM plants. First advantage of using the GM plants in agriculture is it made crops more tolerant to abiotic stresses. It made crops more tolerant to abiotic stresses. Now, what are these abiotic stresses or the biotic stresses? Abiotic stresses are the non-living factors that are impacting the negatively on the living organisms. These are the non-living factors on the plant. So there are some biotic stresses for the plant and abiotic stresses for the plant. Such biotic stresses includes insects, fungi, bacteria, virus that is invading the crops and leading to the damage of the crop. Whereas the abiotic stresses are the non-living factors, but it has a negative impact on the growth of these plants, such as cold, heat, drought, metal toxicity. These are some of the abiotic stresses. Right? Now, genetically modified plants is going to provide tolerance to these abiotic stresses, such as tolerance to heat, tolerance to cold, tolerance to salinity. How it is producing? If you see the plants that are living in desert areas, those plants are adapted to those conditions, so therefore they can tolerate to the heat conditions. And some plants growing near the seashores in the salinity region, those plants are adapted to these regions, so they can grow in those regions. But other plants which are growing in the normal condition, they cannot grow in these abiotic stresses or in these extreme conditions such as heat, cold, saline regions. There those plants cannot survive. Now, using the genetic engineering techniques, you can insert the gene of interest in these plants that provides resistance to heat, that provides tolerance to cold, tolerance to salinity and metal toxicity. So therefore, it helps in the surviving or the growth of these plants in the drought conditions, in the saline regions. There also you can cultivate the plants to produce the crops. So that is the advantage of using GM plants. I will explain taking an example, that is genes coding for salinity nature. Now, how the salinity? Some crops, they have tolerance to salinity. So why? Because they possess the genes that is coding for ion transporters and antiporters which transport sodium and hydrogen ions and maintains the cellular concentration. Right? There are certain genes in these plants which is going to maintain the osmoregulation or cellular concentration by transporting the sodium and hydrogen ions. Those plants have tolerance to salinity. Now, extracting these genes or isolating, in the previous chapter you have studied, that is in the biotechnology principles and processes, you have studied the isolation of genetic material. So, the source organism or the plant which contain these tolerant genes, that is transporters and antiporters, those genes are isolated from those plants. So in this example, Arabidopsis contains DTNHX gene which is having antiporters antiporters genes which is going to transport sodium and hydrogen ions, and it has a capacity to maintain the cellular concentration. So isolating this gene from Arabidopsis, and it is introduced in Brassica napus plants. It is introduced. Now you know how the gene can be introduced, how the recombinant DNA can be produced. Yes or no? The genetic material of the Brassica napus plants is being isolated, and you are going to attach the DTNHS gene with a vector, and it is introduced into the Brassica napus plants by making the host competent. So for the plants, what is the method that is used is gene gun method. Using that method, this gene is being inserted into the Brassica napus plants, and the gene of interest gets integrated with the host DNA, and it develops tolerance to salinity. So when the experiment was performed, Brassica napus plants was growing in high saline regions, that is 200 millimolar salt concentration. It was able to tolerate that much salinity, right? So therefore, using genetic engineering techniques, the genes can be inserted in the plants. And another example is gene NAHA, which is isolated from E. coli. Even this gene is also having antiporters ions, coding for antiporters ions, that is helping in maintaining the osmoregulation. So the genes were isolated from E. coli and they are introduced into the rice plant, that is Oryza sativa is a scientific name for rice plant, and therefore the rice plants which are transformed or which are containing the NAHA gene has developed tolerance to salinity, and therefore they can grow in the saline regions. See, if there is a land near the salinity regions where these rice plants cannot, now you know how much demand the rice has got, right? Then if we are unable to grow these rice plants in the saline regions, if we are unable to cultivate in those regions, those lands are going to remain as wastelands, and you are not going to achieve the proper economy, right? But using the genetic engineering techniques, we can grow these rice plants by making them tolerant to these abiotic stresses, and then you can use those wastelands for the growth of these plants which can produce the good quality rice. Clear? So these are the advantages of using GM plants, that is making crops more tolerant to abiotic stresses. Transgenic plants developed tolerance towards salinity by insertion of the DTNHX gene in some cases it is NAHA gene. So this is the advantage of the techniques of GMOs, that is the gene can be isolated from smallest microbe and it can be inserted into the complex plant or it can be inserted into the complex animal. Let us see another advantage of GM plants, that is reduced reliance on chemical pesticides. Reduced reliance on chemical pesticides. What it means, how the reliance on chemical pesticides is reduced by using the GM crops or genetically modified plants. Usually now we have seen, in order to meet the high demand for food production based on agrochemical based agriculture, which involves the usage of fertilizers and chemical pesticides and insecticides, it is increasing the yield, right? Now it is possible with the genetic engineering techniques to build the plants which are insect resistant and pest resistant. It is possible to produce the plants which are insect resistant and pest resistant, means the plant itself is going to have the resistance towards the pest and insect. So therefore from externally we no need to spray those insecticides or the chemical pesticides, because the plant itself is having an inbuilt resistance towards this pest and insect, right? So it is possible with the genetic engineering techniques to insert the gene. Now these genes which are insecticidal or which are pesticidal, they are being isolated from certain bacteria possess. So in the further classes I'll be dealing with how to produce the insect resistant plants and the pest resistant plants, right? So from a particular bacteria some toxins are there, the genes coding for those toxins which are insecticidal in nature are isolated from that bacteria and they are inserted into the crop plants. So these crop plants, they develop resistance towards the insects and pests. So therefore the complete reliance on chemical pesticides, it may not be 100%, but it can be reduced. To some extent, the chemical pesticides can be reduced. If the chemical pesticide usage is reduced, the environment is going to be less harmful. It is not going to contain the chemicals, toxic chemicals can be prevented in the environment. So it is going to prevent the pollution in the environment by usage of the genetically modified plants that are pest resistant and insect resistant plants. So that is how the one second advantage of the GM plants, that is reduced reliance on chemical pesticides. Another advantage is reduced post-harvest losses. Another advantage of genetically modified plants is reduced post-harvest losses. Now, what are these post-harvest losses? Students, once the crops are cultivated, after a certain period of time, once they are mature and grown, what happens? Harvesting is going to take place. After the harvesting, the crops are stored and they are distributed in the market where it is reached to the end users, to the customers, right? So, the damage that is taking place after the harvest, any damages during the storage, during the transportation, while it is transported to the market, any damage that is going to take place, they are known as post-harvest losses. The post-harvest losses can be reduced by GM plants or GM crops, right? For example, if you take tomatoes, when the tomatoes are harvested, okay, they are stored, they are marketed till it reaches to the end user. Most of the tomatoes will be damaged because of the ripening of the tomatoes. So the delay in the ripening of the tomatoes is possible by genetically modified organisms or genetically modified plants. Delay in the ripening is possible, and those tomatoes which are produced by genetic engineering, it is known as flavor saver tomatoes. They are known as flavor saver tomatoes. These are genetically modified tomatoes. Gene that is coding for the ripening of the tomatoes is being deactivated by genetic engineering techniques, which makes the tomatoes in delay in ripening, so they are stable and firm with nice flavor till it reaches to the end users, right? Once the tomatoes are getting ripened, they become damaged during transportation. Once they are damaged, they become more susceptible for the microbial infection, which is leading to the spoilage of those tomatoes and the crop loss. This can be prevented, as well as some crops, when they are stored for long time, that will lead to the quality loss or it will lead to the nutrition loss. Once again, these losses can be reduced by genetic engineering techniques. So, GM plants reduces the post-harvest losses. It helps in the prevention of the post-harvest losses till it reaches the end users. Increased efficiency of mineral usage by plants is another advantage of GM crops. Means GM plants helps in maximum utilization of the minerals that are supplied to it. Plants require certain minerals for its proper growth and development. Some of the minerals such as potassium, phosphorus and nitrogen are some of the important minerals that are required by the plants for its growth and development. So, the maximum utilization of these nutrients by the plant helps in its proper growth and development. Also, it is going to prevent early exhaustion of fertility of the soil. How? More deposition of the minerals in the soil, but the plant is unable to utilize those minerals, then it leads to the deposition of these minerals in the soil, leading to the soil toxicity. Therefore, the soil becomes unfertile and it is going to prevent the growth of the plants. But if the plant is able to utilize these minerals to its maximum extent, then there is a proper development in the plant, as well as the fertility of the soil is also going to increase, which absorbs more minerals from the atmosphere and they are transported into the plant. So let us take one example for this, that is nitrogen fixation bacteria. How this nitrogen fixation bacteria improves the soil fertility? Yes or no? Nitrogen is a source that is available in the atmosphere, and nitrogen fixation by the bacteria, that is these bacteria helps in conversion of the atmospheric nitrogen into the useful components of nitrogen, that is ammonia, as well as it helps in another nitrogen products, that as nucleic acids require nitrogen for the growth and development, enzymes require nitrogen for its growth and development. So the nitrogen is very much important component, and so the plants cannot waste this nitrogen, and the nitrogen fixation bacteria, which is living in plants as a symbiotic association, helps in conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into the useful compounds of the nitrogen, such as ammonia, nitrate, that is going to be utilized by the plants. The genes that are present in these bacteria that helps in nitrogen fixation are known as NIF genes, NIF genes. So these genes are isolated from the bacteria, okay, from the plasmid of the bacteria, and they are inserted into the plants, which is going to develop the importance of maximum utilization of these minerals, okay, and they are going to utilize the more amount of nitrogen that helps in its growth and development. Also it helps in the restoring the fertility of the soil. Let us take another advantage of GM crops or plants is enhanced nutritional value of food. Enhanced nutritional value of food. Now the GM plants helps by enriching the food with the proper amounts of nutrition. Right? Some foods may not have the required amount of the nutrients that are required for the growth of an organism. Right? Now, these nutrients can be enriched in these plants using recombinant DNA technology or genetic engineering techniques. That is production of nutrient rich food using the genetic engineering techniques. For example, vitamin A enriched rice. Vitamin A enriched rice can be produced using recombinant DNA technology known as golden rice. It is known as golden rice. Now, how this golden rice is produced? The precursor for the vitamin A synthesis is beta carotene. Beta carotene is a precursor for vitamin A synthesis. So, the genes coding for vitamin A, beta carotene, is inserted in the plants. It is inserted in the plants Therefore, the beta carotene can be produced in the beta carotene is produced in the plants, but it is not produced in the edible regions. So it is placed in such a way that it is produced in the edible regions, that helps in the synthesis of vitamin A. So it helps the enhanced nutrition value of the food, that is going to prevent the diseased conditions. It is going to prevent the malnutrition people. So it is going to provide all the vitamins for the malnutrition people. That can be done, and it is possible through genetic engineering techniques. Another example or another advantage of this GM plants is GM plants are used to create tailor-made plants. GM plants are used to create tailor-made plants. What are these tailor-made plants? What happens when you go to the tailor? Right? You are going to give the specifications according to which the tailor is going to design the dress for you. You are going to give the specifications to the tailor, and he is going to stitch and give you the dress. Right? So, means the GM plants used to create tailor-made plants means you can design your own plants by either by inserting the gene of interest or by removing the non-functional genes from these plants in order to produce the desired characters or the desired traits from these plants. The genes can be altered or manipulated. Therefore, GM plants are used to create tailor-made plants. We can produce rich plants that contain more amount of starch, or you can create the plants that is going to help in production of fuels. The products of the plants can be used as fuels. All these things is possible through the GM plants or GM crops. So these are the advantages of using genetically modified plants. What are the advantages? One, making crops more tolerant to abiotic stresses, reduced reliance on chemical pesticides, help to reduce post-harvest losses, increased efficiency of mineral usage by plants, enhanced nutritional value of food. On GM plants used to create tailor-made plants. Means you can design the plant to produce whatever the product required for you. Now I am going to discuss the bits, the competitive bits that are related to the concept which I have discussed. Clear? So, question number 1. Monoclonal antibodies are option A, obtained from a cell and act on one antigen, obtained from a group of cells and act on more than one antigen. Option C, obtained from a group of same type of cells and act on single antigen. Option D, obtained from a group of same type of cells and act on more than one antigen. So monoclonal antibodies, we have discussed about it while I was explaining about the applications in diagnosis. So in diagnosis, in order to detect the antigen that is causing the disease, we require the antibodies. So those antibodies which act upon the single type of antigen and produced from a group of same types of cells, it is known as monoclonal antibodies. So from this, the correct option is option C. So this is the right option. It is obtained from a group of same type of cells and act on single antigen. Right? It is produced from the identical immune cells and are specific to single epitope of antigen. Clear? Then moving on to question number 2. Agrochemical based agriculture includes option A, fertilizers and pesticides, option B, genetically modified crops, option C, RNA interference, and option D, all of these. So agrochemical based agriculture includes fertilizers and pesticides, genetically modified organisms is included in genetically engineered crop based agriculture. So option B is wrong. Option B is wrong. RNA interference, it is one of the technique of the recombinant DNA technology to silence the gene. So option C is also wrong. When B and C is wrong, option D is invalid. That is, all of this is also wrong. So option A, agrochemical based agriculture, utilizes the chemical fertilizers and pesticides. So option A is the right option. Clear, students? Then moving on to the next question. Find out the incorrect statements regarding GM crops. It makes crops more tolerant to abiotic stresses. It results in decreased efficiency of mineral usage by plants. It helps to reduce post-harvest losses. It enhances the nutritional value of food. Find out the incorrect statement regarding GM crops. It makes crops more tolerant to abiotic stresses. Yes, it is a correct statement. It results in decreased efficiency of mineral usage by plants. No, that is a wrong statement. That is, it results in increased efficiency of mineral usage by plants but not the decreased efficiency. So this is the incorrect statement, but it is the right option for the question. Option C, it helps to reduce post-harvest losses. Yes, it is a correct statement. It enhances the nutritional value of food. Yes, it is a correct statement. Moving on to question number 4. Golden rice developed through genetic engineering is enriched with option A, high lysine content, option B, high methionine content, option C, high glutamine content, option D, high vitamin A content. Just now I have explained golden rice was the example for one of the advantage of the genetically modified plants, that is enhanced nutritional value of the food. So golden rice is rich in vitamin A content as it contains the precursor beta carotene which helps in the synthesis of vitamin A. So right option is option D, that is high vitamin A content is the right option. Moving on to the next question. Question number 5. Which of the following agricultural challenges cannot be solved with transgenic techniques? Option A, crops are damaged by frost or drought. Which of the following agricultural challenges cannot be solved with the recombinant DNA technology or genetic engineering techniques? Crops are damaged by frost or drought. Yes, there is a solution for this because GM plants made crops tolerant to abiotic stresses. This is possible. That is, you can have a solution for option A. Crops are damaged by insect pest. Yes, we can produce insect resistant or pest resistant plants. So the problem B can also be solved. Option C, that is public concern about safety of synthetic pesticides. Yes, this also can be resolved as genetic engineering is producing insect resistant and pest resistant plants. When the plant itself has resistance inbuilt towards the pest, then no need of external pesticides to be sprayed upon them. So option C also can be solved. Option D, public preference for organic vegetables. Yes, this is the main concern. Whatever we do, they are the hybrid varieties and the organic vegetables that have public preference that cannot be resolved through genetic engineering techniques. So option D is the right answer. Option D is the right answer. Then moving on to the next question. Which of the biotechnological application is related to agriculture? Which of the biotechnological application is related to agriculture? Therapeutics, it is related to medicine. Diagnosis is also related to medical. Genetically modified crops is related to the agriculture. and D, energy production, it is related to the industrial application. So option C, genetically modified crops is the right answer. Option C, genetically modified crops is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. Question number 7. In which year Green Revolution for increased food production took place? Option A, 1930. Option B, 1940. Option C, 1960. Option D, 1980. In which year Green Revolution for increased food production? The Green Revolution took place between 1950 to 1960s. So, option C is the right answer, that is 1960. Question number 8. Which is the correct statement regarding the advantage of genetically engineered crop-based agriculture? Advantage of GM crops. A, use of expensive fertilizers. Option B, production of harmful effects on environment by fertilizers. Option C, production of high yield and environment clean crops. Option D, only production of high yield. So, use of GM crops brings high yield and chemical free environment, because when GM plants are used, there is no much utilization of fertilizers and pesticides, so there is no harmful effects on environment. So production of high yield and environment clean crops is the right answer. Option C is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. Question number 9. The transgenic plant flavor saver tomato carries an artificial gene for option A, delayed ripening process, B, longer shelf life, C, enhanced flavor, and D, all of these. The transgenic plant flavor saver, I just now explained, they help in delayed ripening processes. Longer shelf life, yes, if the process of the tomatoes delaying is ripening is delayed, then it increases the shelf life of this tomato and it has a rich, stable, firm and a enhanced flavor. So option D, all of these is the right answer. All of these is the right answer. Question number 10. One of the critical research area of biotechnology is to provide best catalyst. So the catalyst in the form of a option A, lipid, option B, vitamin, option C, protein, option D, microbe or pure enzyme. So one of the research area is providing the best catalyst. So the catalyst could be in the form of a microbe or it could be in the form of a pure enzyme. So option D is the right answer. Option D is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. Question number 11. Green Revolution was succeeded because of option A, high yielding varieties of seeds, option B, chemical fertilizers usage, option C, improved irrigation facilities, option D, all of these. Yes, the initiatives were taken to increase the food production, which involved high yielding varieties of seeds and hybrid seeds were used, chemical fertilizers were used, and improved irrigation facilities was also implemented to enhance the food production. So option D is the right answer. Option D is the right answer. Question number 12. Golden rice is a transgenic variety of Oryza sativa rich in vitamin A, lack of which leads to, yes, vitamin A is very much necessary for the eyesight. The lack of vitamin A leads to a disease condition known as night blindness. So option A, night blindness, option B, sickle cell anemia, option C rickets, option D jaundice. So question number 12, for this the right answer is option A, night blindness. Night blindness is the right option. The lack of vitamin A or the deficiency of vitamin A leads to night blindness. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 13. Increased efficiency of mineral usage by plants causes A. Early exhaustion of soil fertility. Option B. Prevents early exhaustion of soil fertility. C. Reduces nutrient content in the soil. Increases nutrient content in the soil. Increased efficiency of mineral usage by plant causes, what it causes? It prevents early exhaustion of soil fertility. It won't cause early exhaustion of soil fertility. No, it prevents the exhaustion of the soil fertility because the nutrients are being utilized by the plant. So the soil takes up new nutrients from the atmosphere and they are transported to the plant. And once again the fertility of the soil is restored. Therefore, option B, that prevents early exhaustion of soil fertility, is the right answer. Question number 14. GM plants used to create tailor-made plants which supplies dash things to industries. Option A, starches. Option B, fuels. Option C, pharmaceuticals. Option D, all of this. So the GM plants used to create tailor-made plants that helps in production of starch, fuel, anything that is required can be designed in these GM plants and it can be produced. So option D, all of these is the right option. Right students? We will continue in the next class.